Are you jacked up on Jesus?
All right, guys. Hey, guys. Welcome to the Vanguard Cinema Podcast, Episode 2. Today, we're taking a look at Harmony Korine's 2013 film Spring Breakers, which really puts on display the decadence of capitalism, of entrepreneurship, the excess that comes in the wake of the American dream. It's an appropriate time, given the times we're living through right now, as companies, corporations exploit this coronavirus for maximum profit. Capitalism is less fettered than ever at this moment. And Spring Breakers is, more relevant than ever in that sense. And then it really does put on display the shocking excess of success.
Yeah, I think that in a way, almost that Spring Breakers is kind of like an artistic retaliation to the pitfalls of Occupy Wall Street and the movements that came after the financial collapse in 2008. It was almost like Harmony Korine throwing up his hands in the air and saying, fine, if this is the system, if we're going to live in a dog-eat-dog world in society that where, the ruthless survive, the sociopathic are successful, then, fuck it, then who am I to judge anybody? I'm just going to have a good time and, live in this fantastic hedonist land, and we're better setting for it than the armpit of America in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Yeah. The Southern Florida party scene is really on display here. And Korine kind of cuts back to it over and over again as kind of this representation of, you could look at it as a condemnation of what American culture has come to: endless partying, drinking, very little substance at this point. And he kind of, basks in that throughout the film, really blows it up to the maximum and ratchets up the insanity with, a multitude of this neon lit, insane party scenes where the drug induced insanity just is out of control. And that's kind of the point of this film, is really to revel in the excess, to bask in the hedonistic glory of this scene. And that's one of the main pleasures of the film are those scenes, are those moments where Korine really just lets the camera kind of explore that scene and soak in the excess. The cinematography is gorgeous, and it's these moments that this film is made of, strung together by these kind of musical like beats and passages of repeated imagery and almost musical like editing.
Yeah, I think that this film does a lot, but what I think is most kind of that, I guess the elephant in the room is this film was actually terribly received when it was released. It was
not necessarily terribly. I mean, critically, it got mixed reviews, I'd say.
I don't know. I would say that most people who saw this movie definitely kind of wrote it off as maybe like a teen party.
Your film. Average consumer.
The average viewer, for sure. And I think that it didn't really get the praise that I thought that it merited at the time. I think that the way that it was, especially due to the marketing campaign, which was very much celebrating it as this teen beach party movie, of the whatever. I think that looking at it with a fresh set of eyes almost 10 years later, you really kind of see that, or at least I do, that Harmony Korine is kind of fed up with the moral preening almost. And we talked about it last week, how Terry Gilliam was not a moralist. I think that that Harmony Korine's even less of a moralist, and he's not judging anybody for making the point or making the decisions that they're making in this movie. He's not judging the girls when they decide to commit robbery so that they can go on their spring break. He's not judging Alien for, doing what he's doing, but he's just kind of accepting it for what it is, even though what it is difficult. And he doesn't really distinguish between that and the, Wall Street banking, kind of cut your throat out kind of attitude either. And I think that when he kind of hammers home the lines one after the other of, this is the American dream, baby, this is, whatever, that's him kind of making that point.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I believe this film came out in the same year as The Wolf of Wall Street in 2013, and they both actually touch on a lot of similar themes. This is far more of the same ilk of a film like that than it is, anything like Baywatch or some ridiculous, beach teen comedy. This film is really interested in exploring, kind of the ramifications on a societal and personal level of entrepreneurship, of capitalism, and when it's unfettered and unregulated. And I think that's what James Franco's character Alien really does represent in this movie to a large extent, which is kind of entrepreneurship gone wild with no limits or bounds or regards for human suffering. And like you said, he repeats over and over, this is my American dream. I made this happen. this is my dream that is mine, and there's no denying that. Just like the Wall Street bankers in The Wolf of Wall Street, he's a capitalist and an entrepreneurship in and of himself. And I think that's what Karine is pointing out, that capitalism in its true pure form is ugly. It is belligerent and
it's a dog-eat-dog world.
Yeah, it's a cutthroat, blood-soaked game.
Yeah, and I think that also it's kind of like, if we're gonna do that, you might as well live it to the highest degree, right? So it's like, why not just get away? But I think that it also, one of the things that he touches on, and one of the things that I wanted to get into is this whole idea of faith. And I think that one of the points that Harmony Korine is making in this movie that was really missed is that I think that in a weird way he's kind of grappling with a society that's lost its religion. I think that's why one of the protagonists, the first one to leave, the one with the most moral compass, right? Leaving her away, she's not willing to be pimped to sustain the the fantasy, the fantasia of spring break forever, right? She's not going to go along with it. She doesn't feel comfortable, so she leaves. And that's the one with faith. That's the one with her church. And even though he does kind of, right, and even though he does poke fun at them, are you jacked up on Jesus, that whole stuff. I think that he does also show that kind of, there is value in that kind of community, and also the fact that none of the other ones have that. And I think it's this kind of, as we move towards a secular society, and I don't think that, like we said, Harmony Korine's not a moralist. I just think it's interesting that he did decide to make that a focal point of the movie. And
that's a good point, because he really does ride an interesting line this whole movie between kind of mocking things and critiquing them and just plain accepting them, because there definitely is that element of mockery when it comes to the Christian faith. There's that whole opening part where it's really the jacked up on Jesus with the ridiculous preacher, and Korine goes on to continue to mock that kind of crowd in his next film, The Beach Bum. He kind of mocks it, but he's never quite able to just make an outward condemnation of something, or to really make a bold declaration of any sort. He's more comfortable just kind of depicting it, pointing it out, and in the same spirit as he attacks or critiques or looks at the capitalism and hedonism of Alien. I think it's a similar kind of line he's writing there.
Yeah, I think they make nice spoils for each other.
Yeah, and that's something you see in a lot of his work, is kind of a very nuanced way of looking at certain populations that many might be quick to judge or quick to condemn. Korine he's not a moralist, as you said.
Yeah, and I think that, but it's one of those things. Is that he's not a moralist, but this is a scathing criticism, I think.
Oh yeah,
it's no holds bars. I think that Korine is so repelled by these elements that he's sort of the only way that he can sustain it is to just kind of lose himself in this hedonist.
Well, just to show it, just to expose it. Yeah, I mean, just showing it is enough. The passages of this film where he's showing the most brutal and ugly parts of what's going on. He's not necessarily, him coming out and making a bold moral statement. He's just, depicting it is enough, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. The fact that this film makes so many people as uncomfortable as it does and is intended to, I think that is the point, putting you on this ride, along for the ride through this journey, and bringing out those kind of emotions in the viewer is exactly the point he's making, that this is a dirty industry that you do have to have compromised morals to succeed in.
Yeah, I think that he's kind of doing the whole balancing act where he's it's kind of a give and take relationship. It's you can live this fantasy life forever, but it's not free. So it's what are you willing to do to sustain this illusion of that this lifestyle provides you? So it's the price continues to grow up until the end of the movie, where the remaining two girls in Alien go to kill the Gucci Mane's character.
And spoiler alert,
best friend. Oh,
he gets killed.
Oh yeah, Alien gets killed right away. Yeah. But then it's the two girls that continue on this murderous rampage where they're successful in killing everybody in this house and stealing what is it, a Lamborghini that they drive off in,
and implied a lot of money too.
Right. Yeah, and then they kind of get away, and it's a happy ending for them.
Exactly. But the message is kind of the dark message, is that they succeeded, but only because Alien, went down, and they kind of inherited that, they're kind of the reincarnation of that spirit. They're only able to live on at his expense. The vicious cycle continues, right? It is a happy ending for now, but, only for how long can you sustain it before they're themselves the victims,
Yeah, one of the things I also really picked up on the film this time I watched it was I think that he's kind of drawing parallels through to American history. Like I think that the big fucking pop like stashes of marijuana, these like big plantation style houses, the like obvious appropriation of black culture from the main character Alien, and like I think that he is kind of drawing these like historical lines where he's like talking about how like the American capitalist system kind of was built on the back of this kind of like southern plantation history. I don't know.
Yeah,
I thought that there was a lot of like kind of interesting allusions to that throughout the film.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Especially because at the end, like I can't like not read into the fact that there's like no black people until the fact that like you meet Gucci Mane's character, who's like the old best friend of Alien, who's like decided to like move away from, take everything that he knows about, and then kill him, and then now these like white people inherit the wealth. I don't know. I just thought that like maybe that maybe not intentional, but I think it just kind of plays into the whole narrative of the like the critique of America, the critique of the capitalist system, and who succeeds and who rises to the top.
Yeah, I think that's a totally fair reading of the film, considering how concerned Karine clearly is with, kind of critiquing the system on a very foundational level. And yeah, to trace it back all the way to the roots is, I think, a fair place to go with this, considering how symbolic the film is, how metaphorical it is, and how Karine kind of embraces a really abstract, vision.
Yeah, I think what's important to remember about Karine is like this isn't a kind of guy. He's not a virtuous guy, right? Like he got banned from David Letterman's show at one point because he was rifling through Meryl Streep's purse. He's spent most of his life like a drug addict. Like, he's not trying to preen in this film. What he's critiquing is the system that makes people this way. And he's saying that, of course people are going to hyper indulge in the system that we're living in because that's what the system rewards. Yep. And he's not judging the people who are living it, because he's saying like he understands exactly what these people are going through, because in a way he felt a lot of trapped like that in his youth, I think. And he makes a lot of, especially at the beginning of the film, it's like people are so tired of seeing the same damn thing every day. And, there's a lot of treat it like it's a fucking movie, treat it like it's a video game. Like people are looking for thrill and excitement in their lives, and they're completely starved of it. And you go away off into this like fantasy land of absolute hedonism. Yeah. And it is fulfilling. It is exciting, but there is a huge cost. And it's kind of like those are the only two options people have: despair or kind of like disillusionment.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that for the most successful characters in the film, Alien and Gucci Mane's character, that would have been the alternative. Were they not to pursue a life of illegal, drug smuggling and gang-related activities and stuff, like the alternative would have been probably poverty, and that's what our government, our state has allowed the state of affairs to become. There is no, for so many people, there is no other option. If you're born into poverty, then the cycle continues, and those that succeed in getting themselves out of it, even through illegal means, they're criminals. So yeah, I think that's a very astute point. And yeah, I just think that Karine was probably surrounded by a lot of these types in his youth, people that didn't really have any good options, any bright path forward. So I mean, what else do you do besides kind of resort to crime and violence? That's a cycle that obviously he was kind of born into and molded in, I think.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. I mean, if you look back at his own, like, upbringing before, I mean, the dude wrote Kids, right? I mean, like, he's not,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a pretty seedy. And
it's also totally non-judgmental. I mean, that's a film that should be judgmental, but the reason that it works is because it's it's completely void of judgment. Yeah. One of the things that I also really like about the movie is the kind of how immediately the mood is set by the cinematography, right? The lighting, it's so obvious that I think it kind of, I like the hyper stylized neon, right? So it's like, you're either like the opening sequence when it's like all the like beach, like boobs, beer, fucking all that shit. And I sprung for the extra 4K, so this was like, whoa, right? Like real in your face. Yeah, it's $7.99 on Amazon. But either way, you go directly from that to like this dry, like, completely like, poorly lit, like, dreary, sort of style. And that's like the college, like experience. The whole dorm room sequence is shot in that. And when he goes back to, anytime that spring break, like the lighting is completely different. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean the lighting in this film is so key, and he distinguishes those two worlds in a very clear contrast with lighting and with color. The Florida scenes are so brilliantly lit. And the whole film is beautifully shot. Even the scenes that are in the college town, the whole film is amazingly shot on 35 millimeter film, actually. And it's actually it's such a departure if you're familiar with Kareen's other work. Gummo, Julian, Donkey Boy, Mr. Lonely. His films always had
Trash Humpers.
Trash Humpers had an extremely lo-fi kind of nature to them. That was the vibe that he was going for, and because he was never a fan of production value. But given some of the people, the costume designer and cinematographer, whose name I can't exactly pronounce, but who's amazing, who we worked with on Spring Breakers, this collaboration he started, you see a real change.
Is it the same cinematographer as The Beach Bum?
Yep.
It still keeps that whole hyper-glamorized kind of...
Same with the guy that shot a lot of Gaspar Noé's films.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Anyway, you see a real change in aesthetics here where Kareen really starts to put forefront the cinematography, the lighting, the color scheme. And I think that's, in my opinion, the most memorable part of Spring Breakers, and why it's just such a intoxicating film is because of the visual elements. It transports you to this world. And Kareen said he was inspired by the Michael Mann's film version of Miami Vice, some of the neon lights and kind of moody atmospheric vibes of that film. And he just takes it to the max here, really cranks up the lighting, the impressionistic set design and costume design and everything, the color scheme. It's all so in your face, but it's also, it all works because of the scene it's capturing, of the essence of the spirit it's trying to encapsulate.
Yeah, I think that Harmony Korine has always had the vision of an auteur filmmaker, the unique kind of perspective that it takes. But I think that Spring Breakers was a unique progression for him in the sense that he learned how to use the camera to tell the story along with the actual screenplay that he was writing. I feel like in his most successful work, in my opinion, before that was Gummo, as we noted. The film, not the camera work isn't bad by any means, but it's much more subtle. It's much more understated. I think this flashiness was a new direction for Harmony Korine that we'd never seen him in, and I think it's super strong. And I think that it really adds a new kind of engaging element to his films that sometimes his films were lacking. It's almost a complete reversal from something like Julian Donkey Boy, which is a bare bones Dogma 95 tribute.
Yeah, totally. And I think, the thematic reason to embrace that kind of excess is obvious. Given the film's themes, and also
budget,
and the film's budget, yeah. And this was one of the first A24 movies, so he was really got lucky in the fact that he was able to score a deal with a distributor that was able to take his film and market it in a way that got it out there. And obviously, it helps too that he had the star power of Selena Gomez and Vanessa Hudgens, who the casting of which was really intriguing given the more R-rated, intense adult themes of this film. I think for a lot of people that is the reason they knew about it or heard about it, is just because of that casting, along with James Franco, who is given what's now an iconic performance. A lot of people at the time thought he was snubbed of an Oscar nomination. It really endures as one of the most memorable screen performances and characters, in my opinion at least, of the 2010s. The characters that are created in this movie are just so goddamn colorful and memorable.
Yeah, for sure, it's a fantastic performance. Didn't Riff Raff try and sue the film because of copyright infringement to that?
Yeah, he said it was blatantly inspired by him, and they didn't give him credit, which Harmony Korine disputed. But
either way, I don't know if the film would have ever been recognized, or James Franco would have ever been recognized by the Academy for that role, but he certainly should have been. Yeah, that was fucking amazing. I think it does. It's one of those weird anchors of the film, because this, love James Franco or hate him, there's, whatever. He's a strong actor, and he really holds that film together. And I think there's, in like a unique way, he adds this like odd flavor to the film that kind of reminds you that this is a parody of something. It's not a real thing.
Oh yeah. No, his performance definitely, it goes so far, it almost goes too far, but that's what Franco is capable of. He reminds me of Nicolas Cage in that way. He's able to take it right to the point of almost being too far, but it's not quite there. He still is believable, especially in this world. Yeah. And the virtuoso and intensity, and the fact that he just isn't afraid to go there is what really makes this film, and makes for such a great contrast to the kind of more naive and shy characters that are the four college girls. And this dynamic at play starts to really evolve and become interesting as the film plays on, as you see them kind of become more into this world. They enter this, it's almost like a Godfather type situation in a sense, where like the young and innocent slowly but surely transform as they start to realize the material, the capital gain that is at their fingertips, just as long as they embrace certain things and throw certain morals out the window.
Yeah, and I think that one of the comments, one of the major points of this film is that like you might not make it to the top if you don't throw all of your morals to the wind and just decide to live this eternal spring break forever. But if you do decide to go home, then you're just going back to the mundanity of your own existence. Your life is totally unexciting. Yep. It's never gonna be as exciting as it was when you were in spring break, and you're always gonna be like chasing that dragon, or Yep. And I think that that's kind of a commentary for like, oh, you're gonna try and like be morally above this capitalist system. You're not gonna participate in its barbarism and it's selfishness and
you're just going to work for someone that does, basically.
Yeah, or you're going to resign yourself to it, and what are you doing? Nothing. You're just hurting yourself, basically, because you're not participating and you're not going out and getting, so you might as well risk it all. Is I think the kind of point that Harmony Korine is making.
Yeah, and I think it's that the fact that he does have that kind of nuanced take on capitalism and the spirit in general, that he kind of refuses to outright condemn people for taking part in it. He more just points out how fucked up it is in the first place, right? Like he's not the human beings are more just cogs in the system more than they are perpetrators, right? And I think it's the system he's really pointing out and trying to critique, not necessarily the players in the game, because he doesn't really condemn the
it's not a preachy film at all. It's almost approving of it. It's almost like all of it's a celebration, but it's a celebration as a satirization, right? So if you just completely misread this film and read it on its surface level, you could read it as a celebration of fucking crime. But what it is it's comparing this film and this like crime and drug trade and everything to the greater capitalist system, and it's not drawing any distinction. Yeah. It's just saying these people are doing exactly what's happening over here, only we have a set of different moral standards for this.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's such an interesting, enduring work and statement on these themes.
I think it's going to definitely continue to develop a cult following and really be revered as a classic someday, because I think that a lot of its merit and a lot of its kind of best parts are still kind of just gaining potency, I guess.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and people are, I think, also kind of hopefully understanding what it was actually trying to say, what it actually meant, and kind of some of the themes that Harmony was getting at, because it is a powerful work when you look at it that way. It's just a matter of viewing it with the right lens on, and I don't think Harmony Korine is necessarily upset, or I don't think he was really disturbed by the fact that so many people.
I think it made its point for him.
Yeah, I think it made its point, and I think he kind of probably liked the fact that so many people misunderstood it and kind of just viewed it as this exploitative party film. I don't think he really cares. He's not the kind of person that really wants to moralize or make a point. He just makes his art for himself, and at the end of the day, that's what it is. But for those of us who kind of understand his sense of humor, his artistic sensibilities, for those of us who have been with him for a while, I think that this film is really represents the height of his work, his mastery.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's him when he's at his best, like when he's making Gummo, like when he's making The Beach Bum, which we'll get into later, but it's an uncelebrated masterpiece. But I think a lot of the elements that are kind of I feel like The Beach Bum, which was that was his film that he made right after this. There was just a long hiatus.
Yep.
But I think that it's kind of a compounding on all of those themes. It is still a critique of capitalism, but it's still a celebration of self-indulgence.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a theme he's been focused on lately, and I think Spring Breakers is just one of those films that's always going to go down as one of his absolute masterpieces.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the ideas that he has in the Spring Breakers are really compounded in The Beach Bum, which.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely in many ways a spiritual continuation of the themes in Spring Breakers, and that it continues to explore hedonism and excess at all costs. Although the Moondog in Beach Bum is in many ways kind of like the lighter reflection of Alien, who's kind of the darker shadow of these themes. Moondog is not necessarily obsessed with success. He's obsessed with his art. And just like Alien, he's also a poet. Alien's a rapper. Moondog is purely a poet. But he's concerned solely with his poetry, with his own life and his own pleasure. And I think that ultimately is the point Korine is making, which is that is the correct way to go about these things. And then, of course, Moondog, has the has the luxury of living in excess regardless, but it's not ultimately what determines his happiness. It's not ultimately his drive. And I think, yeah, in many ways, it's the two sides of the coin, the two kind of people.
I think it's the two sides of harmony, because exactly. I think if you think about it, Harmony Korine definitely knows this about himself, is that he could have definitely become like a, home invader, burglar, Brooklyn kind of like hard skateboarder guy, right? And he was definitely not opposed to petty crime, like, whatever. He could have become an alien. Like, I mean, not that Harmony Korine would have ever become an alien, but I think in his mind, he can imagine a world where he spirals out of control and like this is how he's like the only way he's ever going to get it. But in reality, he is this moondog. He's a poet, he's a filmmaker, and he's found himself where he's able to live extremely comfortably. But one of the points that I really appreciate about the Beach Bum is that whenever Matthew McConaughey's character is reading his poetry, whenever Moondog's reading his poetry, it's terrible. Yeah. And the crowd loves it anyway. And I think that's just Harmony Korine making the point that this is all meaningless anyway. Yeah. Like, whether you're successful or not, like, it's all about what pleasure you're driving. That's why he sets his fortune on fire at the end of the movie. Exactly.
That's what the ultimate statement in that is, which is kind of, at the end of the day, to reject that material wealth and to kind of find happiness in your art and in your very nature of existence, which Moondog is so clearly mastered. He says at one point in the film, "I'm a reverse paranoiac. I'm convinced that the universe is conspiring to make me happy." Which is kind of the opposite of the capitalist spirit you see so displayed in Spring Breakers, which is just consumerism at all costs. At all costs, more. You have to have more success. You have to have more fans, more money, more everything. And at what cost? At the end of the day, you're dead.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think that in Spring Breakers, they're lost in the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. And Moondog's always arrived at happiness is wherever Moondog is. It's a state of mind. It's a state of being. And I think that shows the growth that Harmony Korine has had throughout his own life. This is a man that's constantly been searching for, and desperate for contention. Yeah. Just being happy with himself. I don't know if that's I use that word right, but being desperate to be content. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think that he's been searching for internal peace his whole life. And I think that he's like, he's aspiring to be Moondog, even if he's not Moondog already. Whereas like the antithesis of Moondog, the thing that he never wants to be is alien.
Right. Kind of that just, consumerism and always needing and wanting more. And now Harmony, has settled down a little bit. I think he has a wife and a daughter now. He's not.
Yeah, he's married to one of the pink-haired actresses. Rachel Korine.
Right. He's been married to for a while, I believe. And I feel like he probably is at that point of life where he is kind of content just making his art, living his life in a more peaceful and probably a little bit less hedonistic way. And yeah, I think that's a beautiful reflection that hopefully we see, a third and final piece of this Florida trilogy, which he's talked about for a while. It was originally going to be The Trap, which was going to be a crime film starring Al Pacino in Florida that fell apart, and which he made The Beach Bum instead. So hopefully we see that materialize, or just a conclusion to this trilogy, because it's definitely proved to be one of the most interesting detours in his filmography and one of the most unexpected acts in his career.
Yeah, maybe he'll finally release a crack about the race riots, the pitch he gave to David Letterman in 1997 or whatever.
Yeah, he's had some pretty out there ideas, but